Welcome everyone. Today we are going to talk about these little guys right here, which are memory cards. These are compact flash cards, but what I'm going to talk about today deals with compact flash, it deals with secure digital, deals with CFast, whatever kind of card you happen to have. There are some tips and some best practices that we need to employ when we're dealing with memory cards. So what I've done for the day, I've taken my 10 best tips that I can think of. We're going to break them down one by one today to give you a really good idea on how you can take care of your cards and not ensure, but hopefully improve the chances of the images that are on your cards actually getting onto your computer and then getting backed up onto another external hard drive. So let's go ahead and dive in. Tip number one is to always format the memory card in the camera you plan to shoot with. Now, some of you might not have ever formatted a memory card. So what formatting does, you guys, is it, for one, erases all of the information off of the memory card, and that's great. But it's different than a traditional erase all in the fact that it actually wipes the card clean and then it puts files back on the card that specific camera likes to have there. And the reason that that's important is if you were to format your card on your Nikon camera, say it's a Nikon D850, pop the card out and pop it into your other Nikon camera, say it's a D810 or something like that. When you formatted it originally on the 850, the 850 put little files on that card that it likes to have there. When you then move it to the 810, if you don't reformat it, sometimes that can cause some problems. So when you're going out for a shoot, the best thing you can do is grab yourself a memory card that can be emptied, because again, formatting will erase the card. Pop it into the camera you're going to use for the shoot, format it right then and there, and you should be good to go. If you need to use a second camera on the shoot, bring along a second memory card and format the second card for the second camera. And again, formatting it for the camera is just pop it in, go into the menu, find the format option, and select it. Some cameras call it initialize, but format initialize does the exact same thing. So make sure you do that first. Tip number two is never delete any images off of the card using the camera. Cameras are great at taking photos. They're great at writing data to memory cards. They're pretty bad at deleting data from a memory card in a reliable way. So honestly, like some people say, you can delete the really bad stuff, but not the super bad. Like there's different rules about it. My hard and fast rule is I never delete photos off of the card using the camera. It's just not something I do. I don't use the erase all option. I don't use the trash can button. As soon as a photo gets recorded to my card, it stays on that card until it's in my computer. Then I format the entire card at once using that specific camera. Cameras just aren't great at deleting things, and sometimes that can create a little bit of an issue in the file structure and even render your card unreadable. So best to just stay safe. Don't delete those images off of the card using the camera. You always want to just use the format option when you're deleting photographs. Tip number three is always format new memory cards before you use them. So I've seen this so many times. People will go to Costco, BT dubs, Costco is a great place to buy cards. They don't really sell compact flash or CFast, but if you use SD cards, Costco is a great place to pick them up. See a lot of people buy some new cards, and I wish Costco would sponsor my videos. Anyway, see people pick up new cards, they take them out of the package, they pop them in the camera, and they start taking photographs. Again, when you format a card, it makes that card work really well with that specific camera. So as soon as you buy a new card, you should pop it into the camera, format it, then start shooting to it. If you skip that initial format, sometimes those images you shoot will be unreadable by the computer, which is a pretty big bummer, especially if you shot a lot of photographs. Tip number four is develop a system for tracking which cards can be formatted and which cards can't. As an example, I have a system for me where I have a case for my memory cards. Hold that thought. We'll talk about cases in a minute here. I have a system where if memory cards are right side up in my case, I know that they have been imported into my computer, they've been backed up, and they are ready to be formatted and used. When I take a card out of my camera that's full, I will flip it over so it's upside down, and any upside down cards mean that they need to be imported, they need to be backed up before they're ready for formatting. So I keep that system right side up cards, good to be used and formatted. Upside down cards, don't touch them, they need to be backed up, put on the computer before I do anything else with those photographs. Which brings me to step number 5, which is store your memory cards in a nice case. I've linked a couple of my favorites down in the description, so check those out for sure. But I like to get a case that's waterproof, that's dust proof. Again, you got to think about it. All of your images are being stored on these little cards. It's really good to keep them safe. Think of it as, you know, not some little disposable things, but thousands, potentially thousands of images that you've taken and you probably really like. So buy a nice case, spend like $10 on that, and keep them in there. Make sure you develop that system, like I said before, for which have been shot to and which have not. Tip number 6, this one could be a little bit controversial, so hold your comments till the end. I like to buy my memory cards from a reputable brand, from a brand that I can trust and that I have experience with. Now, a lot of people have their own brands. The 2 brands that I have experience with and I have seen perform year and year and year after year, so on and so forth, are Lexar and SanDisk. Lexar went out of business a while ago, they're back. SanDisk has always made great cards. I personally have had great experiences with those 2 brands. Mostly I want to say it because of this. There are other good brands out there beyond Lexar and SanDisk, but for me, going to like Walmart and picking up the cheapest memory card you can find is probably not the best choice. A lot of those cheaper cards come from manufacturers that don't put as much care, don't use as high quality of flash memory, and they just might not give you the same results. So I like to buy my cards from a brand that I can trust. Again, do your own research, but for me, that's Lexar and SanDisk. Those are the brands that I prefer. All right, step number 7. Always safely remove your cards from the computer. So whether you're using Mac or PC, once you're done importing images off of the memory card and you've backed them up, you want to obviously eject that card from the computer. So Mac or PC, Windows people, I think it's called safely remove. Mac folks, it's called ejecting. But you want to take the extra step to do that before you just pull the card. Especially if it's mid-copy, pulling the card can corrupt files, all kinds of bad things. So take the time to safely remove those memory cards from the computer on Mac or PC. Which leads me right into number 8, which is, that's a 9. 8. Oh man, I think I did 8 last time. Number 8, never yank the card from the camera while the camera is still writing to it. So sometimes, you know, you'll take a bunch of pictures and the buffer will fill up of the camera and the camera will be writing to the card and you'll be like, those last 10 photos I just shot, I don't really care about them. So I'm gonna pull the card out midway through the writing process. Sometimes, and again, I wanna stress that this won't happen all the time, but occasionally if you were to do that, you're not just endangering the 10 photos that you just shot, you're endangering the entire memory card. Because sometimes if a camera is midway through writing it and it doesn't have time to finish, you can actually corrupt the entire card, not just the image that's being currently written down. So make sure your camera is done writing data to the card before you yank it out of the camera. Pro tip 2, if you really want to be sure, I actually like to power my camera off before I take a memory card out, just to be sure that it's absolutely done. A lot of cameras have a little indicator light on the back or the front that blinks when it's writing to the card. So it's good to just double check that that indicator light's not blinking before you yank the card. That brings me to number 9. I've had trouble with my fingers today. Number 9, which is if you have dual card slots in your camera, if your camera takes an SD card and a CF card, or 2 SD cards or 2 CFast cards, whatever it is, use both of them. And if you are in a situation where you are taking images that you're either being paid for or that are once in a lifetime opportunity types of images, set the camera to the backup mode where it will put one copy of the photo on one card and another copy on the second card. It's like an instant backup, especially if you're like a wedding photographer, portrait photographer, commercial photographer, someone who's being paid for the work that they're creating. You really want to make sure you have a backup for your client. If you lose those photos, that's on you, so make sure you keep those safe. In fact, I would really recommend that if you are one of those types of photographers, buy your cards in pairs of 2. So when you buy a new 64 gig card for your camera, buy a second 64 gig card. And those 2 cards, I would label them like 1A and 1B. And those are always in the camera together all the time, and your camera is always set to the backup mode, just to make sure your cards, your images are safe. Finally, number 10, this is a big one for people who use compact flash cards or any other type of card with the pins and the sockets. So the problem is if you look inside your camera on a lot of cameras all cameras that use CF, but any camera that uses pins and sockets, if you look in the camera, you'll see a bunch of pins sticking out. Well, here's the thing. Normally when you put the card in, those pins, they line up perfectly and it goes on great, there's no issue. But sometimes one of those pins will just get a little bit out of alignment. And when you're putting in the card, you'll feel a little bit more resistance than you're used to. If you do that, don't keep pushing. Instead, pull the card out, grab a little flashlight, look inside the card area, and you might see that one of your pins in your camera is bent a little bit. If it is, grab some tweezers, get in there, boop, boop, kind of knock it around a little bit if you can. It's much easier to fix a bent pin before it bends all the way. If you take that card and you just jam it into the camera, even though you can feel a little bit more resistance, that pin, instead of being bent like this, all of a sudden is bent like this, and it's much harder to fix. And that can be a $300 or $400, maybe even more than that, repair. I've had to repair a few cameras like that. You send them back to Canon or Nikon or whoever it is, and they turn it back around and they charge you a bunch of money. So if you feel that resistance, don't keep pushing in the card. Be very careful when inserting compact flash cards, as you could cause some serious damage. All right, so those are my top 10 card care tips. Again, if you have some of your own, leave them in the comments section down below. That's by no means any sort of exhaustive list, but I hope that you learned something new. If you have some memory cards and you've had issues with them, if you've had a corrupted card or something like that, leave that down in the comments as well. I'd love to hear about it. But if you run into corrupted cards, you will learn this lesson the hard way. Hopefully you can follow these tips and never really have to have that sort of problem happen to you. So if you guys like this video, I would love you hitting that thumbs up button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button. Also, we publish videos every single Monday, so hit the subscribe button down there or up in the corner to stay up to date. There's also a little bell icon next to subscribe. You can click on that and be notified when we post videos. Lastly, special thanks to Canon. Canon, you guys are awesome. They lent us these cinema cameras to take this great video footage that we can give out to you guys for free. So Canon's awesome. You can check them out in the description. Also, any of the products we talked about are in the description as well. So definitely check those out.